Hey everyone, back tuning into today's video. It's Solar Sunday. We're going to have a look at Solar Cycle 24 today, see what's going on the sun. We've had some big news from NASA. It looks as though we're reaching the absolute peak of the solar maximum of cycle 24. It's going to be a much weaker peak. It's going to be a much weaker solar cycle, as we know, compared to the last few solar cycles, but nevertheless we are reaching that peak, and it's going to be we're going to know when we're at the peak because we're going to get a reverse in the magnetic field. It's very difficult to explain what the reverse in magnetic field is, so I'll place a small video, a small YouTube video from NASA just above this video here at Gaz Weather Vids on my home page. Play that. It only runs a few minutes long, but it's a very interesting video, and it will explain what the reverse in the magnetic field is. I will talk about it a little bit in a few minutes, but I haven't got time to go into detail about it. But if you want to know about the reverse in the magnetic field that's going to occur anytime, that is going to tell you all about it. This video is going to have a look at the bigger picture, where we're going with the solar cycle, and then we're going to have a look at some very interesting information that was sent across by a good friend of mine about what could happen to the temperatures if this solar cycle is as weak as it looks like it could be. I'll talk about all about it in a moment, but before I get on with all of it, just want to talk about the advertising. That's green keyword ads on my pages at gazwebbiz.com. If you roll your cursor over green keywords, they'll display ads. But if you click through the word, that's the key, click through the word, and you'll go to the advertised website. And by doing that, you'll be supporting gazwebbiz.com. And thanks very much for doing that. So, going to start off, as we always do, these solar cycle videos with a quick look at the solar disk on our side of the sun today, and this is from the website solarham.net. Very weak activity today. The official solar activity is categorised as low, and it's not surprising because there's very little to be seen on the sun today, to be honest. Few little areas of sunspot activity. I think these over here are developing. These are mature sunspots, but nevertheless, very little activity to go out today. And of course, that's been the case throughout this solar cycle. We've seen very little in the way of activity. Much weaker cycle than we had in cycle 23, and indeed before that, cycle 22 and cycle 21. It's a much weaker cycle than we've had for a long time. And just to emphasise how weak it is, this was the solar disk in April 2000, and just look how much activity there was in April 2000. A massive amount of activity going on there in terms of the sunspots. Huge sort of massive activity going all the way across the solar disk. Massive sunspots. Look how big that sunspot is just there. I'll just clear that and start highlighting it again. Look how big that sunspot region is alone. A massive area. And up here, huge sunspots over here, huge areas of activity going on. It was an incredibly busy time, April 2000. And again, just to compare it with the current maximum, where are the sunspots? I've been saying this sometime. Where are the sunspots for this maximum? Because they just aren't there in comparison to what we've been seeing before. Now, they are there. There are sunspots, but just to show you how weak this cycle is compared to those other cycles. So, again, this is the observed and predicted chart from NASA, and this just again emphasises how weak this cycle is, cycle 24, compared to cycle 23. This is the peak of cycle 23, maximum cycle 23 over here. Big cycle, again, this peak occurring here in 2000. Probably somewhere around that picture I just showed you from April 2000. Actually, I'm not sure what the exact month was for the maximum of cycle 23, but it could have been April 2000. Nevertheless, 2000, the year 2000 was around the year that we saw the solar maximum. But again, look how weak this solar maximum is compared to cycle 23. This is cycle 24, and yeah, really weak solar maximum. That's cycle 23. We're about half, I think, about half the output of the solar maximum, half the energy, or half the sunspots of cycle 23. Quite remarkable difference there between the two solar cycles. So if we have a look at the predicted chart for cycle 24 quickly, this was from the year October, this is from the month October 2008. I've forgotten just how active NASA was predicting cycle 24 to be. I just stumbled across this while again all these charts in this video. I thought I'd include this just to show you how unreliable these forecasts for solar cycles can be. Because while some scientists, particularly Russian scientists, were predicting cycle 24 and cycle 25 to be very weak cycles, NASA was going for a really big cycle, and this was the prediction in October 2008 from NASA. They was predicting that cycle 24 would be on a par, really, with cycle 23. That was the prediction back then, that we'd get that drop off, and then we get the ramp up, and we go into a very, very active cycle for cycle 24. So just to show you how unreliable these forecasts for solar cycle can be, I'm going to talk about solar cycle 25 in a moment. It's predicted to be an even weaker cycle potentially than cycle 24, but you do have to always be taking these solar cycle predictions with a bit of a pinch of salt. But that's quite remarkable, and I've forgotten that NASA was going for a really intense cycle at one point. Now, I think what we need to look at, what we need to start thinking about, is how cycle 24 fits in with the past solar cycle. So I want to just show you this chart quickly, because I think cycle 24 is actually running very closely to the really weak solar cycle 5, and if it carries on into the next solar cycle 25, could be even weaker, and that is indeed what occurred with the solar cycle number 6. So let's have a look at this chart. This is quite interesting. The red line is solar cycle 24. The blue line is solar cycle 5. Solar cycle 5 ran from around 1799 through to around 1810, 1811, something like that. The actual minimum of solar cycle 5, I believe, was around 1810. So as I say, the red line is cycle 24. That's where we are. And this is up to June 2003. So just coming up to where we are, just a little bit before where we are. And look, the blue line and the red lines are very much in sync here with one another. They're not exact match. Actually, solar cycle 24 is very slightly stronger than solar cycle 5, but it's quite a remarkable agreement there between the two models. Actually, quite strange that. Notice, between two cycles I should say, notice that the peak on both solar cycle 5 and solar cycle 24 is occurring very early. This peak here for solar cycle 24 and solar cycle 5, where it never gets any stronger than this peak, occurs very early in the solar cycle. So we get this ramp up from the minimum of the previous solar cycle, so the minimum of solar cycle 4 and the minimum of solar cycle 23. Get a very quick ramp up after a prolonged solar minimum. It was a prolonged solar minimum. They both have that. Then we get the very quick ramp up to that peak that occurs, this is around November, December 2011. And then we sort of slide back down again through 2012, and that's exactly what happened with solar cycle 5 as well. We never get to that peak with solar cycle 5, and I doubt very much whether we'll ever get to that peak with solar cycle 24 either. But you can see that there's a very close sort of similarity between solar cycle 5 and solar cycle 24. They very much are very much in sync with one another there, almost like a symbiotic sort of relationship going on between the two solar cycles. Quite interesting matter. Notice that what happens with solar cycle 5 is that we slide down into a solar minimum through the years 1803, 1804, 1805. We reach the solar minimum around 1808, and we get a very prolonged period without any activity whatsoever through this period just here, 1809, 1810, and into 1811 as well. So if that's right, if solar cycle 24 continues to be close to solar cycle 5, we're going to get to a period where we'll go through at least 2 years, maybe more, with not one single sunspot recorded. Now, what you have to think about this is that solar cycle 5 was a long time ago. As I said, it's running from the year 1799, 1798 through to around 1810, 1811. And you have to take into account the fact that the ways we see the sunspots now, the telescopes that we use, are much better than they were back then. So there could well have been sunspot activity that wasn't recorded through solar cycle 5 that we are recording through solar cycle 24. So this period, the minimum of solar cycle 5, where it appears we go through a couple of years without a single sunspot, may not be quite right. There may have been very small sunspots going on that weren't recorded at the time, and if that happened now, if it happens through the minimum of cycle 24, it may be that we will record some sunspots. But and again, it's true for the maximum. Actually, it's a bigger peak for cycle 24 than it was for solar cycle 5. Again, that could well be because solar cycle 5 wasn't recording as many sunspots that were still there as we are for solar cycle 24. But quite a remarkable similarity between cycles 24 and cycles 5. It'll be very interesting to track that through the rest of the solar cycle to see whether we continue to be close to solar cycle 5. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens with that. So this is solar cycle 5 and solar cycle 6. On this chart here, you've seen this before. These are all the solar cycles from solar cycle 1 through to the prediction for solar cycle 25. There's solar cycle 25 over there. It predicts being an incredibly weak cycle. These are solar cycles 5 and 6 just here. Say true sort of delta minimum period going on. And a good friend of mine, Dean, from the website Hinkley Weather, he sent across some very interesting information. You can find Hinkley Weather, by the way, on my links page. But he sent across some very interesting information about the about temperature indexes through solar cycles 5 and solar cycle 6. So I'm just going to show you that quickly just now. If I get rid of that, this is the chart that I want to show you. This is how the temperatures responding across Europe for solar cycles 5 and solar cycle 6. So we start over here at 1770 and we end up at 1840. So we're going through something like what is that? Something like 70 years of temperature data. We've got the Central England temperature in there. We've also got the temperature for De Bilt in Holland and Overlap in Germany. And what is very interesting is that we get something like a 2-degree temperature drop over a very short space of time through this period. So again, there's the how we start the period just there. Then we get this dramatic drop going on. That's in towards the minimum, I think, of the solar cycle 4. We recover a little bit, and then we get another really big drop in the temperatures across Europe going on. Now, this is the Central England temperature just here, and admittedly, that doesn't drop quite as much as we see on the continent. But nevertheless, we do, for De Bilt, and particularly evident for Germany, we do get something like a 2 degrees Celsius temperature drop from around 9.5 at the start there to something like 7.5, 7.4, something like that. Once we're in the absolute delta minimum of, well, we're just going on, just there, we're actually just going on into solar cycle 6, but we're right in the heart of a delta minimum there, and yes, there's a very clear decline in the temperatures there through solar cycle 5, solar cycle 6. For Europe, I say not quite as evident for the Central England temperature, but the Central England temperature does drop. I'll just get rid of the camera again. The Central England temperature just dropped quite a bit from where it is, but then it sort of stabilises, although it does get quite cold at times. We dip down in some really cold sort of Central England temperature years there, going under 8.5. Never get back towards where we was in the heart of the Little Ice Age in the Maunder minimum, but nevertheless we do lose about a degree, I think, from where we start off. But for Europe, that's really intensely cold, that the decline that occurred through solar cycle 5 and solar cycle 6, very dramatic, over 2 degrees Celsius. If we was to see that now, imagine a 1 to 2 degrees Celsius temperature drop in the next decade across Central Europe, it would be big news. It would have huge ramifications. Now, as I say, we're not sure whether Solar Cycle 5 is going to be, Solar Cycle 25 I should say, we're not sure whether it's going to be as weak as it is being predicted, but I think Solar Cycle 24, tracking Solar Cycle 5 very closely, does imply that Solar Cycle 25 could well come out close to Solar Cycle 6. It's going to be interesting to track that Solar Cycle 24 and Solar Cycles 5 chart. It's going to be really interesting as we go through this to see whether we continue to track it. I've got a feeling we will. I've got a feeling but once we get through to the next Solar Cycle 25, it will probably be on a par with Solar Cycle 6. We'll have two really weak solar cycles, and that will have ramifications. Whether we'll lose 2 degrees Celsius in a decade or so across Central Europe, I'm not sure. It'll be quite that drastic because we do have to factor in climate change. But nevertheless, we could really be in for it over the next decade or two, particularly Central Europe, but also affecting the British Isles as well. So I hope I've not bored you too much. I hope I've not gone on too long. If you want to see, again, I'll just remind you, if you want to see about the about the solar reversal that's coming up, the reversal of the magnetic field, check out the little video that's just above this one on my homepage. It'll tell you all about what's going to happen in the next month or two as we change the magnetic field on the sun. That's it for now. Hope you found the video interesting. Bye for now.